BTWRLM220. Blazing crickets. No place to hide now, is there? Don't know, folks. We're not supposed to have any crickets. We're supposed to be responsive, even in the heat of the day, in the heat of the battle. And I don't know that it's going to work so well. Again, a little disappointed on the response left from last week's broadcast. Some of you tune in, some of you don't. This week, in fact, I'm probably just going to put up a bunch of links because I'm just going to tear through some stuff and not going to post anything up on the Blogcaster in this first section for the stories. I'll let you just go ahead and click on the link if you want to read more. Just too many links. It takes too long. And if I can, audio check again. Last week I had a problem. It took me 2.5 extra hours to try and get the file to work. I hope my audio is up better today. If I can get that out of the RLM chat would be great. Thank you. So here he is again every week, trying to bring you the things that are going on, taking what you think you know and trying to get it to apply, trying to make sense of what isn't maybe making any sense at all. It's this insanity that's was now foisting itself upon us. There's no principle, it seems. And as I twittered out that the ultimate battle space behind the woodshed, where principle meets the unprincipled future. There's no reason, no principle behind the future, what we want. What they say, what the future we want is not your future. It's the one they're going to plan against y'all. And it's written down as the big deal. How much more are they going to laugh at y'all when they said, but we told you the whole time what we were doing, and you lifted a finger not. It's not my opinion that you have to engage or stop making excuses. And I'm just amazed at where we do apply ourselves. It does take a time. It takes a commitment. Thank you, Grimner. Appreciate it. It does take that, but it takes engagement of that commitment. That over time, and I wish I could talk. I really wish I could talk more to show. Give the actual examples. I don't even know if there'd be enough people that wanted to hear it. Maybe they'd like to hear the success. Maybe that's what people like to do. But there are very interesting, powerful things going on. They're so subtle and they're so seemingly slow. And not to get too deep into it. We've been working on one project. I didn't even know I was working on this project. I tend to just be the receptacle of the research and the receptacle of the strategy and tactic based on all this research on how you take what you read and how it works. How does it apply? It's not just a knowledge. It has to be workable, and things aren't workable. So you got to figure out how to work around the non-workable. You have to be able to deal with people in a sense that they have no authority, and do it in a way that they understand that the people factor. You're dealing with people with feelings. You're dealing with honest ignorance. You're dealing with this compartmentalization. You're dealing with all of our foibles as people, ourselves, and then what was injected in us. So all that comes to play. But I just found out we've been working on a project. I've been helping work on a project for 1.5 years, I think 2 years maybe. And we don't quite have the answer yet, but I can only tell you every indication is we may be looking at one more proof of what I've been telling you over and over, sticking to the black and white, and be ready prepare yourself to be ready and find the place to assert that and assert it. And I'm talking about you command the space. You command the space over the experts and what the experts say, the certified, the licensed ones. And I guess I want to make that comment. If you find yourself looking to have to qualify for a license in a state, you're probably going down the wrong path, and you probably don't understand what that so-called license is. These licenses are not competency certificates. All they are ultimately are ethics, liability obligation acceptances. In other words, you get licensed on how you will proceed by the standard so that you limit your liability. As long as you're under the state-created standard, then you get a certificate. And that's supposed to do you. Well, ethics has nothing to do. The future they want ethics, the ethics that they put on themselves, these people, are not, if you deal in healthcare, going to help make you healthy. That's not going to cure you. So any of you all that are thinking about going down the certification path to anything in the state, it's probably the wrong direction. Anybody who goes to someone who's certified in the state is probably going in the wrong direction. That said, you're probably having to go there because you're completely obliterated from any actual knowledge in what to do about it when something happens in the current state of your confusion, your insanity, this thing they have up around us that everybody seems not to want to know about, or even not to want to know what to do with. I went through last week and delineated even more, and I'm shocked. It always shocks me. Not that no one's listening. I mean, if no one listened, I figured that would be an indication. But it's not that no one listens. It is that most all don't really act and respond appropriately. But it's not that no one listens. But it's always amazing to me how I will lay out methodologies for you all. And you have to think about this. The people that might listen to me ought to just show up and listen. And those numbers should remain the same or get insulted and go away or rise, and hopefully they'd rise. But from week to week to not have a consistent listenership and then to see the correlation between methodological approaches, explanations on what's going on how to perceive, on how to do things, what to watch out for, and to watch the numbers fall in every one of those weeks I do that, meaning here that the listener yet can't know what I've actually spoken about and avoids that week, is a really, really interesting thing for me to watch. I just wonder in that. How do you telepathically know not to show up that week to get the tools to go do something? Now, I have other thoughts I know may be working on that. And a lot of people may not want to touch them, and so I don't talk too much about it. But the fact is, it does happen. And it's interesting that in that regard, when I look around, there's just too few of us. And the rest of y'all that are making any excuse to not engage somewhere are going to be all in the future part of what is the future that you'll be seeing as you leave this place. And it's not going to be pretty. Not going to be pretty at all. And in fact, I just saw it was breaking onto the Twitter feed at who were they? The Washington Post or whoever, some mainstream media is telling you that Apple is making their phones in the next 10 years. You will have to agree to be surveilled. They're now admitting it to you. Something I've been talking to you for years and years. And how can you know that? I put the Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars as a perpetual wart on the blogcaster. There to explain to us the future way before what you all have been listening to in the last 15 years, what you think is your realities of all your expose of what the realities are. You don't have a clue. I find people are still amazed at these word things, and then it's important to understand the words, but you've also heard in the nuance of it all, they come out of different jurisdictions. They come out of a force and power that's got the ability to hurt you. And you can't disregard all these. So you have to know these definitions, but they are not the meanings of these words, and we now call them terms, because they're not just words. They're terms. They're weapons. And if you don't understand how that's being handled against you, or that they're being handled, and you don't understand how to avoid those, you're going to be treated by them. It's not my rule. I just assume we all live in peace. I just would rather just go back, what I thought was back, it never really may have was. I can see evidence of it, I guess, is the point. And that was showing you, I tell you about the mining law. I heard on Corbett again. These people who talk, they don't even know, haven't even researched what was out there that worked. talking about unorganized property versus public property. They got to come up with new terms. Well, they're not actually new terms. These geniuses come up with all this stuff, and they don't know all this stuff existed before. Unorganized property is nothing more than a mineral deposit claim that a miner makes. If you look right on the form, you say unorganized. It says an unorganized district. It's private property. And yet you'll go and waste all your time reading to these gurus that want to talk to you about how you're going to do voluntarism. And then I hear the voluntarists, oh, well, you can't talk about no borders or cross-border. Well, if you don't have a border, then you're imposing voluntarism everywhere in the world universally, and it's not what you think it is. And it's not reality either. You're going to have a border. It ain't going to come voluntarily either. And so there's a whole bunch of things I hear and watch and listen, but we're not going to make it. We're not going to get there. I attempt to bring the most basic stuff that we need, we use all the time. Like I said, it's taken a year and a half, maybe two. I can't remember. I don't have a time fix. It's just one project after the next comes, and I don't know I just know on concepts. I just know on the strategies we have. I just remember who we're dealing with. I just remember how they responded. I look at all these things and how we're going to continue to move the ball down the field. So really I have no time. All my life's going away without a moment. And yet, over some time, we come back around and we get feedback. We are absolutely on the point. And we're on the point beyond the ethicists, these people with licenses and certificates. These people don't have a clue of your rights or your powers or your authorities, again, limited by the next guy or woman, guy or gal. That's about as voluntary as we're going to get, actually. But no one really seems to understand that. And so we're going to waste a lot of time inventing new things and people pondering certain aspects of what's going on when it's really right before us. It's not that complicated, actually. If you're dealing with a state certification that's an ethics certification, it may not meet your needs. And yet it's all that system will force upon you unless you fight really hard to abandon those things that are gave you. I say these words in particular to try and catch your mind. I mean, gave you, it's wrong English. Yeah, well, I'm not in English, so I don't speak English. But it's an inflection to try and hopefully grab your mind. I don't know, maybe the guy behind the woodshed can't speak so good. Yeah, that's right. I don't know how to grab your mind on the important points. It's laid out before us to understand the reality of it. We don't have to really go that far. We do have to grab what we are gave and then make sure we hold that what was good. We don't have to hold on to anything that's bad, but we tend to go bad and make it worse. It just drives me nuts. I just can't agree. I understand it. In fact, the examples, I guess you don't understand. And I realized just now, I kind of worked through my mind, obviously, and my experience during the week, obviously. And I forget that you aren't looking on my shoulder or in my ear to hear the types of nonsense that comes through my perceptions on how people respond wrongly. I'm not talking to the people I'm talking to. I'm talking about those that accost them, like officials that accost other miners, and who those officials go to try and cause those miners to just weaken just a little bit enough that they destroy their property rights. Who are these people and officials? And they do it so subtly. Forked tongue, what are the subtleness? It's just amazing. And remember, this is all coming out of communication. This is another thing going on. It's all controlled by the same spirit. So it's always riding back there in my mind. But and I realize you don't know. It just happened again in another thing where we're winning in one. We're winning in a couple of areas, but we win in different ways. Why would a local official not contact you as a property owner being affected and want to go through two intermediaries in order to not do what was required? Has to tell you we're dealing with a superior plan of evasion in the officials. And you can't turn your back on that. Now, most people don't do much, so they don't have to. And that's not going to work. It comes to your door one day, somehow. And the question then is, are you capable of responding? And the response really isn't that difficult as I look at it, but it sounds difficult because I talk fast and a lot on concepts apparently that people haven't even thought of, and I don't understand why they haven't, because that is how they've gotten us messed up. When I see what they've done, I can tell you the answer pretty quickly. It doesn't mean it's going to work instantaneously, but I have a pretty short answer to a lot of the things when you're dealing in the moment. Dealing on as an idea and a generality, as I talk behind the woodshed and broadcast, I have to speak in generalities. I can't really I can get certain points, but I mean on the point of the point. In other words, finding out not as a judgment, but as a real reality wake up limitation. What do you actually know on a specific thing that's coming that you desire to do or that's coming to challenge or harm you? What do you actually know? There's usually, in my subject matter areas of research and experience, are the questions I ask to find out. This happened also this last week, I think it was. Someone wanting to do some really great things. And I could hear deficiencies, inadequacies. And I needed to find out for myself whether or not those inadequacies were real, or whether or not they're just my perception. On someone that really wants to do really good things. And a few questions started to show that the one that the intention was good. There was going to be no follow-through. There could be no follow-through. There was no knowledge of the subject matter. I'm talking basic knowledge of the subject matter, nothing near as complicated as the projects I end up finding myself involved, or tested by, I guess is the other thing, that we do resolve over time. But very basic things. And that just shows how far we have to go. This is, again, good intentions. What do they say about the road to Hades is paved by? Yeah, I think that's what they're talking about. And so we think we know. I mean, we come in earnest believing we know quite a bit. But when we go to apply what we thought we knew, I guess I can feel good that I was able to head off this problem, because he would have wasted a lot of time and caused a lot of trouble for himself and not gotten what he wanted. That he might now, hopefully, now that he's reoriented to see how little he actually knew, this one gentleman I was speaking to, he will then fortify him to understand and grain the basic foundation. And I said, hopefully when you get the basic foundation, we'll come back and we'll talk again, and I'll give you the next layer on top of that as you move toward what your intention is, and to allow you to become successful and allow others that you'll teach to be successful. Now, I do have to hope that he calls back. But this is a very rare bird that does so. You can hear them. I mean, I can hear it. I need the second contact to find out, but normally the second contact comes pretty quickly, because when there's a true intention and a true spirit of fulfillment, the answers want to come really, really quickly. So we will see on a lot of these. But another project we've been working on in the rudiments of the foundation of the law as against even the certified officials. I call them judges, call them attorneys, call them clerks, call them whoever you want. They do not know. And we can set up conditions and look at conditions and find places to impart these clarities. We look, not that we're looking for them, but they show up, and you then have to be aware enough to see how it's gone wrong, but how you're going to clarify the problem and straighten it up. In this case was a probate case. We were able to come in, and this is an interesting problem, not for us, but an interesting problem for the system that wants to block these private property concerns. That they would be helpless to interfere. They could not interfere in a probate case directly. That we took the opportunity to make a probate record of property for a mining claim. which is trying to be by the same system ignored. I thought this thing I did understand, and this is why I saw the importance and why I put time into it. It was important that we work toward the day that a probate court in the state recognized a federal acquired acceptance of a grant as a private property. Why? Because the whole of that system is denying that they are private property, and when they don't, because they don't want to give you property rights, they want to work with you, deal with you administratively, and dismiss you. Now, I just said a ton in that last 20 seconds. And if you're listening to what I'm saying, you're understanding the real game we're on, the real war we're in. So we're waiting now for an outcome, not an outcome, but a decision. We're hoping that the evidence that got put in the record, which will never go away, that's still going to be evidence, we'll get a transcript for all of that, was accepted already. We're just waiting for the finalization and the fulfillment of that in an order. Notwithstanding that system doesn't want to give up that kind of a thing. The problem is it's looking at a worse problem. The theft by one of its, or a couple of its, quite a few number of its members against an estate that we can see in probate was a trust obligation and duty on those officials. Now we're back to what I always talk about. This doesn't turn far. Knowing about trusts, beneficiaries, trustees, trustors, all this simple stuff that most people just pass on by, think that they're nothing, or, oh, they're just some kind of asset protection tool. No, these are the foundation of the law, not legal, the law. And again, the tactic of having them testify against themselves, against their own actions as evidence, bringing those in to dismiss, deny, just destroy their ability, and then on top of that, heaping on the icing, if you will, of the ability that they don't even have a clue what they're dealing with, notwithstanding their so-called license to practice, their license as an oath of an election that a bunch of electors supposedly voted them into office. They are helpless against this. I sit here thinking, wow, I wish people just had an essence of what I see and know in all this. We are done with these criminals where they are, these usurpers, these occupiers. And it's not an argument. It's not an opinion. It doesn't require that we make fanciful utopian ideas, try to reconstruct the world on all we don't know about what has come before, throw out everything because we throw our own terms on something and deny that terms would apply, and that if they apply, we're now, what a bunch of nonsense. You do have to have a basic understanding, but that has to then turn to an application. And as I've said, those that hear my voice, to my limit, have access to my insight. You don't have to learn that. I would guide anybody who I work with through their own basic foundation to bring them along so that they understand what they actually are doing within my knowledge and experience base. And it's gotten quite vast. It's not just learning Constitution. In fact, I was having another discussion. It's not just learning about the Constitution. It's turning around and seeing where it was actually put into practice and just accepting that and moving to the point that they're destroying. Realizing all your so-called constitutional rights are right in the thing that they're trying to destroy. You don't have to go be sounding like you're so smart about all the places you can talk about the Constitution. If you're still learning about the Constitution, you're 10 steps behind. If you think you have a constitutional right, you're not applying them. And so you're either class or any other of the classes of people that think that something's going on are not actually. They're telling that they're living in a fairy tale because there's a war against us, and it wasn't just a war against your mind. That's another trap. There is that war, but that's more of a tool of destruction for you that you accept into. What I try to open up to you ever so softly without getting too, what we're going to say, sensationalistic about it. I've never been that way anyway, but it's still one of those things I try. there's nothing in me that wants to sensationalize these very serious realities. It's not something you can excuse away. And anybody who's excusing it away is another fairy tale to themselves. It doesn't mean anything to anybody, just to themselves. Whether it means anything ultimately to them is only going to happen in their life. And a lot of people just dismiss that as well. It's funny what we dismiss as being enlightened, as being action, as being whatever we're thinking we are to get ourselves, put ourselves a little bit more on a pedestal than we really are. We're groveling naked in the dirt in the middle of a battlefield. And you're going to be lucky to be in a water hole. We don't even have water. It's how bad we are at this point. So are you going to have the mind it's going to take to decide whatever I'm saying? Are you putting it in practice? Are you just learning words? Are you learning what I'm telling you about those words? And what they tell you, the story they tell you on how you're going to respond? Are you learning that stuff? I don't know. I don't kind of know from the listenership at the certain times of methodological approaches. I don't see the response. I don't see the follow through either. Maybe it's because MSG is proven highly toxic. For those of you that don't pay much attention, I had to learn the hard way. Not everything comes automatic to me. I was pretty much a top ramen eating fool. It was fast. It was easy. It made things, I could go quite a long time on it. But I noticed over time, I wasn't feeling so good. This is a long, long time ago. When you could get them like for 10 cents a piece or less. And who would have thunk it that this little spice in here, so-called, this chemical, could be so detrimental that it comes to 15, 20 years later, MSG is proven highly toxic. One dose causes headache in healthy subjects. That caught my attention because that's what I started to get. Notwithstanding all kinds of other weird feelings and sensations and ill health, ill response to otherwise I'm healthy as a horse, if you will. And yet there was just something inside not working. So there's a little notice, buy a PSA to your health. You don't have your health, you got nothing. You're naked in the battlefield, in the desert, just like in Syria, without a tree, without water, without an armory, without armor, without weapons, anything. And you got a headache. Because you've been eating MSG in your food as a natural ingredient. Get that. Monosodium glutamate, for those of you that like the big, expensive words. Found everywhere as an additive in your food, new research has uncovered that this flavor enhancer is extremely toxic, causing a battery of adverse health effects within normal dietary ranges. And so, folks, what was the answer there? Because I'm still kind of a simple kind of sort. I like the pasta, boiling pasta, flavored pasta was fast, easy, and it lasted a while for me. Is it the only thing I eat? No. But the way my life seems to run, when I get focused on something, I don't look out for myself so well. When I finally come time to have to eat, I need something simple. And so, what did I do? I decided I'd go read the package of the ramen. And besides, if you go smell those go smell those noodles, folks, before you put this flavoring in it. That really started to get to me too. How bad that stank, actually. And I was eating that stuff. No, I can go get some pretty nice noodles, and I can get the good ones, and I can boil them, and I can make my own flavor packets from the nice herbs I grow in the garden. And whatever all else I can find, I can put in to make it what? Tasty? We don't need their help, folks. We just need to do for ourselves, and we need to have the knowledge that that is beyond the tale and the question. Anymore, you hear a question on something, you should just avoid it right now until you can do your study. A new study, just like this study, a new study published in the Journal of Headache and Pain reveals a single intake of monosodium glutamate, MSG, produces a headache in a majority of healthy subject and people. It goes on to say that there's other things like spontaneous pain, mechanical sensitivity of masticatory muscles, side effects, blood pressure. My skin would feel weird. Maybe it was blood pressure as well. My skin started feeling like it was hard under pressure. Weird numbnesses that came on over me. Well, yeah, I just stopped it, folks. And yeah, I got another headache, but after a short while, I was clear and free of it. So you can too. This was a serious one. I was affected by it. I didn't know that, but I was. I cut it out, made my own. I made my own independent. I made a non-dependent substitute, which was a lot more healthy for me and has been. And also then you make that one more thing on the list. You don't look for things with natural flavorings, because then you also know, like Pepsi, there's probably some fetal tissue they threw in there and denied, and then got caught, and then pulled it out and then put it back after you all went back to sleep. And another, so that's one thing working on you. If someone knock you on the door and want to attack you or something, maybe you're not capable of responding. You're dealing with a headache. Who wants to deal with a headache? Women have a headache. They don't even want to do the most important and exciting thing in their life. What are you going to do dealing with some official on your door with a headache? And then there's other problems that they put into us. So they're telling us they're putting into us. We've been talking about glyphosate. Here's running across some information I want to ran down just quickly for you. How to protect yourself from glyphosate. I was wondering whether or not you could extract glyphosate problems, glyphosate itself, and some problems out of your body. Apparently, there's a regime that you can use. It's just simply adding to your diet those things that the glyphosate is binding up that causes some very critical functions in your body. It goes into your brain. It deals in how you think, how the cells are made, how they communicate. All this is interfered with by glyphosate, and there is a way to put stuff in your diet to actually counteract the glyphosate. I wanted to throw a little study. It needs going to be required a little more study, but for those of you that realize that glyphosate's it seems to be everywhere now, you have to start looking for things to eat all the time, so that anything you eat will be countered by the glyphosate you're taking in. And I'm telling you, if you have glyphosate, there's these other worse toxins that we're finding out in these things. I'm just going to hit these links for you in the blogcaster. Go there. You'll see 24 ways to protect yourself. It's in all these subject matter areas. I have been searching for it, all in a list of what I do. I look around, like in this first one, eat sulfur-rich foods. Sulfur is a very, very powerful element in your body. It's very, very interesting chemically. And that's what this is from my chemistry days, long time ago in high school. Finding out chemistry is a very interesting element. A lot of these neutral valence elements are very powerful in our bodies. So they go through a list. You may want to consider adopting this. What was also a problem is the glyphosate itself, and there's now a study about the fact that strains of bacteria can destroy glyphosate and what it does. And I wanted to pass this on, this link of biodegradation. I'm going to get it. I will get this. Biodegradation. How's that? Does that sound better for y'all? Of glyphosate pesticide by bacteria isolated from agricultural soil. Now I'm reading that title because I got to remind myself to tell you that there's a bacteria here that they found in the soil, which is an acetobacter bacteria. And that acetobacter bacteria, the aceto family, can be found in probiotics and yogurts and things like that. I want to call your attention to this, that there are now studies that show that bacteria it can break down the glyphosate. I want to say that there are claims that since your gut bacteria can be fortified with acetobacter bacteria, that you then do that while you're eating, so that you can break down the glyphosate that may be in your food before it causes any trouble. The acetobacter bacteria they show here is from soil, not necessarily your gut. Remember, the glyphosate also destroys your gut bacteria as well. And so this is you see a big problem going on, which is serious. But when you find out why maybe all these other elements are not being metabolized to allow your brain to work so good, and your nerves are being messed up, and so we might get things like so-called ADHD and autism and all this other thing going on, or what is the older ones, Parkinson's and MS, multiple sclerosis. But I want to just have you know There's an Acetobacter facialis that is the soil bacteria. There are a lot of Acetobacter bacteria that may or may not be susceptible for gut use that can do this, that I want to show that Acetobacter bacteria can, and that I didn't have time to go study whether or not you any Acetobacter bacteria in your food, in your gut, or in your food, or as a supplement could help. But I want you to know about it. You need to start taking things that are going to counter this glyphosate imposition, which diminishes your capacity and absolutely diminishes your future health, and maybe reduces it, maybe quality health down at least by 10 years. So fascinating little study. I'll send that link on to you. The Acetobacter can be taken as a supplement to your body, a probiotic. Another thing you can try is vinegar that's made natural, what they call with the mother, and eat that like with a salad. Those bacteria go into your gut, and they can possibly, I believe they're a different type of Acetobacter bacteria, but they may still work on it. There's lots of these little critters, these beasties. So if you have a combination of them, they also may work. It's been suggested eating sauerkraut, but if I remember partially, that really goes through a different pathway. It doesn't use an Acetobacter bacteria to make it vinegary type. That's, I think, more of a, the lunocol? It's a leuconone. Anyway, I don't remember. It's something. It's like a leuconoc, a bacteria that then sets up for the lactobacillus to take over. So it's a different combination of changes that the bacteria do to get us to the sour acetic taste in sauerkraut. I don't know if that pathway bacteria will diminish glyphosate in your system. At least there's a proof now, and you can look around. I'm encouraging you to look around. We see Acetobacter bacteria, at least one has the ability to break down glyphosate. You need to look for others that are something you could supplement in your gut so that your mind starts to work more clearly. They made, I reasoned after I was involved with that top ramen, they made it so cheap so everyone could eat it because they were just wanting us to be diminished, is what I felt. And it was like seeing a whole new day when I got done off of it. And I still was able to have, simple soup pastas and had it my way, actually. So and not have my gut bacteria destroyed on top of it. But important information here. You need to get on this glyphosate stuff. It's impressively damaging to y'all in so many different ways in your system. It destroys all. It acts as a surrogate molecule that the body receives as a normal one, and that interrupts your basic processes, and that's a serious thing. I've been talking to you about that, but here's my first awareness that some people have been researching a bit about this, and I want you to know about it. So talking about bacteria and gut bacteria and getting more healthy with it. Oregon joined states where roadkill can be harvested for food. Wanted to pass this on for any time running through Oregon real quick and you hit a deer, stop and pick it up. Have at it, folks. Deer kill kabobs. But wait, hold on. You better read the story. You better get over the blogcaster. When I post it, the state has put a whole bunch of restrictions. Like, I don't know where you're going to go after you kill that deer. When you run that deer over, where you're going to go to fill out the form that gives you the permission to take that. Figure this one out, how they figured that out. But anyway, apparently there's all kinds of deer in Oregon. 126,000 or so get run down every year. Now they're going to give people the right to take it away, and you don't even have to be licensed hunter to do so. And so there's your roadkill bacteria. Good, folks. If you get it immediately, dress it out. Everyone has to carry their ice packs with them now. You might as well get something for the front end damage that you just incurred. And moving on to another potential parasite, No, really, the roadkill can be pretty good if you get to it really, really, really fast and it's not too busted up. But another parasite in the world, the United States, I talked last week, the United States is a terrorist. I talked a week before, the United States is a terrorist. I don't think anybody's calling this out as strongly as you will hear it right now here. Everyone seems, I don't know why, but they'll mealy mouth about the United States as a terrorist. And everything they do is a terrorism. They told us that in 2010. These psychopaths told us. They went extrajudicial. Probably the only one in the world that has told you that, and that was the marker. So, what do we expect from a terrorist that's covered underneath the cloak of the white knight? The U.S.-led coalition downs a Syrian army plane in southern Raqqa. Is the sign of a terrorist, folks. There's no purpose for the United States over there to be downing a Syrian army jet. This started the week out, if I remember right. And I'm going to go down through this. Some of you may not want to hear it. Some of you do. There's a whole lot of links about this. The bottom line, and for those of you that want to tune away, the United States is a terrorist. Now, what are you going to do about it? If you live in the United States of America or you deal with it, you're dealing with a terrorist. That's on you. You people who want to deny and excuse yourself out of the obligation. The United States is doing to you what it's doing everywhere else. The United States itself is a terrorist. And there's others that are in league and allied to them, and they make it look like they've got third-party proxies, which are their baby, their offspring. They're all terrorists. The United States shot down a Syrian plane. What purpose would that be if the United States was over there as other than a terrorist? Starts in the beginning of the week a very big escalation of things, or at least it was thought so. And I want the nuances of this dynamic that went through the week are very interesting to watch. What would you do when the United States actually shoots down a Syrian plane? Doing something that it was trying to defend itself, and the United States lied and said that they were bombing one of the Kurds, and it was found out later the Kurds weren't even in the area; they got run out. And the Syrian army was in there taking out the terrorists. That the United States shot that plane down. In fact, it was interesting. If I read some stories, that plane was first shot at. It was an Su-24, I think it was. It's a bomber fighter. He was doing a bombing run, and he got shot at by one of our infrared 9 missiles the first time, and it evaded it. And so the question is, what's a 30-year-old airplane getting outdoing one of our newer missiles, upgraded missiles? So it got shot at once and moved and didn't get shot down. The second time, though, they used it. I think it was an 120 missile. Now that's a radar missile, and it didn't survive that one. But so United States is not. It's a 50% on its kill shots right now. But what's it doing killing in the first place? Is the same problem that we talked about before when I talked about the Al-Tanf. The United States is a terrorist. The United States it's beyond criminal. And that's what they're doing to you at home, so-called. Your tax home, your big tax plantation called the United States. So what does Russia do? What does Syria do? What do you do when the biggest and baddest bully in the block comes and shoots your airplanes out the sky when you're trying to defend yourself against ostensible terrorists that are ostensibly not supported by the United States or Israel or Saudi Arabia or Britain or France, this gang of terrorists. Every country now having terror, so-called, putting on their people to keep them in fear so they stop looking at who the actual terrorist is. What does Russia do? Russia comes out and says now they're going to be targeting U.S. jets in Syria after America shoots down the first Assad regime warplane. Well, it's not the Assad regime, so this independent, it must be a British propaganda tool. And targeting, I found, was very weak on the Russian side. We're only going to target you. Well, targeting is just painting you as a hostile, not necessarily that you'll attack you. And so that seemed to be awful weak, but it kind of set up an interesting dynamic, because now it puts everybody on notice that targeting could be considered a threat and subject to a strike by a defensive missile or whatever defense that they had. That little threat starts a dynamic which I found was pretty, just an interesting watch. So we have the coalition partners downing this plane. The coalition partners are beyond terrorism. The coalition is a plague. You're not going to hear the WHO, not the rock group, not the owl, no, the WHO, the World Health Organization, call this a pandemic, but it's a plague nonetheless. It's not the coalition partners, but the coalition plague. And it needs to be eradicated. We need a vaccine for this. And that's the people have to start to do something. Now, the Russians had to do something, and they came out of me and said, we're going to now target all planes. In other words, they initiate what we would consider, at least for everyone else but the Syrian government, is a no-fly zone, which caused immediate response from Brandon Tuberville as just a reference for y'all. And it's not improper. I'm just pointing out how the dynamic starts to work. World on the precipice as Russia threatens to shoot down U.S. jets. U.S. refuses to back down. It was a very real and honest, straightforward result that I thought Brandon did call out pretty quickly. But this is where the roller coaster comes. And what we start to see is a very interesting dynamic that shows that the United States is a mere terrorist. Its coalition, the coalition and its proxies is us, al-Nusra, al-Qaeda, al-this, al-CIA, I don't care what name you put on them, they're terrorists. What was the dynamic? Russia announces a no-fly zone in Syria. Wow, what's that going to do? The biggest, baddest bullies, the coalition, the plague, is in your country, inside the cell wall. It can do probably and bring upon you, on your head, about anything it wants. And what was the Pentagon's first response? As Brandon calls it a precipice, it sure looked like it went south pretty quick there. And yet, and because of that, the weight, the gravity of that, you're expecting, you don't know what to expect. That's the shoe to drop. But the Pentagon comes out. I thought coming out and the Russians saying targeting U.S. Coalition planes was weak. The Pentagon comes out and says it's going to change its disposition of the U.S.-led coalition aircraft in Syria. The United States decided to reposition fighter jets belonging to the U.S.-led international coalition. Pentagon spokesman, who cares, told reporters on Monday. Not going to give him any credit. These are terrorists. This is Baghdad Bob. That's his name. I'm not going to say more. Pentagon chooses this. It says it's repositioning fighter jets after the Russians said we're going to target you now as hostiles. What a bluff. What a buffoonery. Such maroons. And for me, that just showed that the capitulation was deafening to me. And here's what happens right after that. Notwithstanding the view that we were on the precipice, as I think Brandon Tuberville did accurately, he immediately came out with that, and I think that was the next day it pops up after the shooting down of that jet. What do you do against this thing? Russia says, we're going to target you as hostiles. Pentagon comes and says, we're going to reposition our planes. Right after that, a newly appointed Saudi prince is named in Saudi Arabia, and it happens to be the son from the third wife of the current reigning dictator, who is anti-Iran, anti-lots of things, pro-Israel. And here we see the conglomerate, the blood clot forming. This is what it's not just a plague, it's a blood, this coalition is a blood clot. The appointment of Saudi Arabian Prince Mohammed bin Salman as Crown Prince marks, quote, the logical conclusion of the period of changes in the highest levels of the country's government, as a Lebanese expert announces to us. And there's a story you can hear. So what happens in this? This guy comes to bear, and what's his opinion? But that we can change, the Saudi Arabia can change its direction regarding Syria. I found that fascinating. That Saudi Arabia ready to compromise on Syria and Yemen through this expert saying, the analysis of this expert. Right after the Pentagon repositions planes, we're at the precipice. And I think we really were, it all depended on how Russia responded. And they come out kind of weak, but they telegraphed a notice. The Pentagon doesn't challenge that at all. That the newly crowned prince comes up and says he's ready to compromise on Syria as well. And who else? That macaroni maniac over there in in France. I guess same place. Macron says Assad's removal no longer a priority solving Syria crisis. All happening right after Russia says we're going to just target you folks as hostiles. We're not going to take it no more. This all happened in quick succession. What's actually going to happen, I can't tell you. What these people are telling us happened is pretty striking. And I don't mean in a U.S. coalition way. And I'm also understanding, and I've been trying to keep track of it. It's kind of hard because they're fighting on so many fronts. The Syrian army is really taking control of this. It's still taking time, and they've got a long way to go. But without the interference, they're doing pretty well. So what might we expect comes up here in the next few tabs. But first, I want to get back to macaroni maniac over there in France. The globalist that just got put into power. France confirms, though. What about these people in France and this Russian response and blaming the Russian phobia and blaming Putin did everything? France confirms no traces of Russian hackers in Macron campaign cyber attack. And you're finding in America the same thing. There's no evidence. But they use this to vilify the people that are defending their country and the allies that they're using to defend the Syrian countryside. That's the people and the government. Again, the democratically elected government, not the regime. Now, if France now finds that the Macron campaign cyber attack didn't exist from Russia, that brings up the question on the Trump. There's no evidence, and that brings up something that's kind of flying under the radar but makes its appearance. Was this a story about Seth Rich and the DNC staffer dude who is said to have leaked information about the shenanigans and the criminality of the DNC in fixing that election? And so what we now start to find is the evidence of all that combined after we hear that France can't find Russian interference. America has no evidence of Russian interference. But this Seth Rich story, a report that was given about it, has now vanished, at least to the extent it can on an internet that's voraciously copying and reposting and mirroring all kinds of stuff. You kind of need to watch this Seth Rich story. I don't know how far it can get, how much leg. There's a lot of push behind it to reinvigorate the investigation of this kid who got essentially, they call it a mysterious death. It sounds more like the murder, and it sounds like there's a reason, and it's not the Russians, and Putin didn't do it, and we're seeing evidence globally that nothing of the sort happened. It's inside our borders. The invasion has happened inside our borders, and as long as we keep putting up with this nonsense that Congress is wasting time investigating things that never happened and couldn't happen, and most logical people and reasonable people know didn't happen, we're not going to get to the underlying problems that are allowing people in this country to come through the chain of rising up through the excrement to the top, the caucustocracy, and becoming the decision makers that will attack innocent people in a foreign country for whatever reason. Pointing to saying terrorists did it when then they in fact are the terrorists. Remember I've said, be careful on pointing out, and you point at somebody and and you claim that they did something, that you don't have those three fingers pointing back. Now, I know Uncle Sam's a little character, a little cartoon character, but him nonetheless, he's got enough fingers still as a cartoon character, because usually you only do 4. He's still got enough fingers to point one out and get 3 pointing back. Uncle Sam. And these kinds of stories are what's coming through, being lost and moved along and forgotten, going in the memory hole, whatever, that people need to glom onto and hold on for dear life, because it's the last bits of evidence we're going to get before this system goes into that absolute surveillance that they're now predicting well within 10 years. I told you it's right here. But now Apple's agreeing with it within 10 years. You know it's probably already happening. It's just to prepare your mind. And that you will be lost to be able to defend yourself. Or you'll make lots of excuses and not have to do anything, and you'll just sit happily behind your keyboards and do what you do in your chats and whatever else out. Now, so France can't find any of the problem interference. There's no Russian evidence that Russia did it. We have a mysterious death that's not being investigated, where the evidence is now clear. There can only be one organization that issued out the murderer of somebody, and the cops are not saying much on that, and that means they're a part of it. Now we're back into our own law enforcement. We're back into our own corrupt systems. The fingers are pointing back, folks. Well, the roosters are coming to roost. The pigeons are coming home, and the message is not good. We can't be crickets. And I see, I'll look up quickly, and thank you, Kayate, SethRich.info. In fact, I think that might have been a site that was set up particularly for the Seth Rich information, SethRich.info. And it was on the request, I also believe, in Kim.com, that somebody do that. And so put those people together. Again, I got a little bit about who the players are on all this. But we have some serious problems that are going under the radar or being lost to the memory hole or whatever, after we're seeing the facts that the United States is a terrorist. And I've been telling you the mirror of the Middle East is reflective, however carnivalistically and distorted upon the United States. It's reflective of what's happened and happening to the United States. You look out and your reality shows that your neighbor's house is okay. I'm telling you, your neighbor's house has been blown up. His finances are gone. His life's a shambles. His family's a shambles. His society is a shambles. And you are looking out with the rainbows and unicorns and lollipops and Skittles. You don't know that it's happened to you. And you didn't know you were subverted by all the people that were around you trying to help you. Oh, we're here to help you because we'll never not be a partner and never not be a friend of whomever. And this reflects back over there again. You know, all these people doing services for you without your permission, without your consent, just pushed on you all by the methods I keep telling you. And you don't step up to stop it, you just complain about it. Oh, I got one more thing to worry about now. One more thing I hope they don't come to my door. I hope they don't ask me. I hope I don't get that bill. Oh, my taxes are too high. Now, what one moment did you stop and figure out that there was probably a crime on you? It's another thing we're doing. We're pointing out that these land taxes and these tax codes and these land use codes and state land use laws are not applicable to the underlying grant of the land that most all you all agree to and pay for, because they feloniously mischaracterize your land as theirs underneath a false use that they say you then agreed to, which in a way you did, because you didn't change the record when they stole your land by making a simple little grammatical change on the record. That all these services and allies are there to defeat you here are no different back there in the Middle East, where we're watching the physical war and the domestic war is invisible to you. Israel deployed 18 jets to Saudi Arabia to prevent a coup when that crown prince was changed out for the younger one. If you had any doubts that Saudi Arabia and Israel were working together with the United States and they're terrorists, if Palestine wasn't your first evidence that Israel is a terrorist and it's not a state, they're talking about it, tell a lie long enough it becomes something. Yeah, recognized under any international law to do anything, and then you see how feeble international law, as far as an organization is concerned, is to it all when you're up against terrorists. That Israel deployed 18 fighter jets to Saudi Arabia to prevent a coup when the king undid and redid its hierarchy of attainment to the office of head dictator in a robe. Sound familiar with your local judges? But I thought Saudi Arabia did. The Arabs don't like Israel. You're not listening behind the woodshed, and you're certainly not listening to people that will go off a lot more than I will on this subject matter. But when the question came down as to whether or not there was going to be such a shakeup as to alter the agreements or arrangements or understandings between Saudi Arabia and Israel, Israel went ballistic. I bet those jet fighters were going supersonic. I hope you put this stuff together, folks. Update. Israel warplanes then, right after that, bombed Syrian forces while Al-Qaeda blitzed their positions. Right after, a couple days, 3 or 4 days after the coalition, they say. It was a Super Hornet that knocked that Syrian Su-24 or 22 down. That's United States Navy, if I understand that right, not a coalition. It doesn't matter. The plague. That Israel bombs Syrian forces as Al-Qaeda, Al-CIA, blitzes their positions in the Golan Heights is no different a terrorism by a terrorist. I'm looking at a tab with the information. I don't know what I can read about it that you can't read for yourself. See it for sure. See the black and white. Understand what's going on. Understand if they're going to do these lies and deceptions openly, point the finger at the terrorists over there when they are the one. You don't know that you are suffering under, and suffering, I mean you allowed to continue to exist, a terrorism in your life. And that's a couple of different styles of them, because we do have the other one that I talk about, also the terrorism of the globalist governance. This is a outward military strike by Israel on the Syrian army, defending itself under the weak excuse that Syria sent over mortars or some kind of thing over into the Golan Heights area, which is occupied and in a contested area, which Israel has no actual lawful claim to anyway. My first thought was then back yourself off the line and let those people fight. Stop bombing the army of a nation that you're supporting the terrorists to enter the proxy to fight, unless you want to be called a terrorist. Israel is a terrorist. How are you tired of hearing that again? And it doesn't really matter to me whether you are, because you can turn away and do nothing. That's your problem. Israel is a terrorist. The United States is a terrorist. Britain is a terrorist. Their people are under attack by the government for all the things you're now seeing to keep them in fear, to continue them to allow the government to be a terrorist. France is a terrorist. Australia came out when that targeting thing came up and said, oh, the war got serious. It got dangerous. We're going to cut back for 2 days. See, these are bullies. As soon as someone with any force came back and said, I'm going to put my fist in your face, they say, oh, I didn't mean that. Australia actually came out and said war was too dangerous, it was unsafe for their fighters. Since now they're going to target the coalition, we're not going to send our fighters. It was too unsafe for our fighters to fly. We're going to pull them back for 2 days until they could figure it out. To show you what kind of bullying is going on. That the Syrian army, despite the Israeli attack, turns the tables on the Al-CIA rebels in the Golan Heights. The Syrian army is not taking it. They're willing to take some losses, and I think this is their noble. They're going to be seen taking the honorable place. They're taking the losses notwithstanding the terrorism, and they're continuing. But we can use this to identify the actual terrorists, and it's up to us to stop it. Call it out and stop it. Get more people to call it out. What did Thomas Jefferson say? Find it later in my life. He says you got to educate the masses, and the masses will keep the liberty, will preserve the liberty, whatever that tends to be. We have to get the word out. It's the only reason why I come, despite the small listenership or the fluctuating, infinitesimal listenership to this broadcast, why I keep coming back week after week after week. Every people in every land have a job to do. Ours is obvious, and until we tell the truth about who the terrorist actually is, we're never going to know which terrorist to actually stop, and we'll continue to make excuses that we have nothing to do. To show you the extent of the denial and or intent that for the United States to be a terrorist, up in the same week, folks, I keep telling you about this timing. There are coincidences, and they do mean something. Maybe not all of them mean something. They still are coincidence. A representative, a Democratic representative, puts forth a bill to stop this nonsense about the terrorists. I'm going to show you how this relates. I'm going to show you that there's a correlation to the Constitution and the letters marquis and privateers, and why we can't be against, the United States cannot sign a treaty that prohibits piracy is the same reason that you're going to find here where, was it Tulsi Gabbard, a representative out of Hawaii, I believe, puts a bill forward, a simple bill to stop arming terrorists, and it only gets 13 supporters. Equates to the United States being a terrorist, intends to be a terrorist, will cause your bill, cause you to be underneath the legal imposition and control and regulation of a tax burden upon you, because you haven't figured that one out. To pay for this, full faith and credit on your back, to pay for this terrorism. That she says, how about if we stop funding terrorism in all forms, and she only gets 13 supporters, is the definition the United States is a terrorist. It is, by definition and equation, the reason why you cannot forbid what your letters of marque and reprisal, your letters of marque for privateers allows you constitutionally to do, which is a legalized piracy. If you're going to go extrajudicial, you can't outlaw payment of to terrorism. Is the definition you live in a terrorist country. Vote. How many ways do I have to get at this? And then does it matter? Does it matter? I wonder, does it matter? If 50 people show up to listen to the broadcast and then do what? Oh, well, that's just the way it is. We can't do nothing about it. Well, then you've lost and you've become a terrorist. You've agreed by accessory. Guess what's worse? You think that was bad enough? Only 13 people support the fact that we should not have a bill that we won't arm terrorists. Why? Because the United States is a terrorist. That on the Senate side, for those of you that follow that there is a government that seems to be showing appearances, and it has an established form. There is a Senate side. One senator put a coexisting bill in the Senate to match this, because that's how it works. Rand Paul, and he only has one sponsor, I think I read, for the same style bill. Means the United States is a terrorist, and it works hand in hand with Israel and Saudi Arabia, and they're all bed partners. How sordid is that? How sick is that? And we agree with it. We agree with it. I say we in the general. Certainly, Representative Gabbard is not of the mind to continue this nonsense. She's the one that went over to Syria and looked for herself and got chastised for it. And they're literally, I think I understood the reading over this time, they're trying to take a hit. Tulsi Gabbard is going to be politically hit on this because she's not a terrorist, but she has no actual force and effect. The 13 other sponsors have no real force and effect. This is beyond party, folks. This is beyond party. This is a psychopathy. This is a caucustocracy. And the United States, the governments now, the coalition plague is a blood clot in the world. It kills whatever it touches. It has no intention to do otherwise. We have the proof. Why are we quiet? What are we doing? Why do we continue to support it? Why don't we have a better word to tell people? And I heard it happen. I just wanted to commend Ron Stevens on his broadcast calling up a mental health center for helping indigenous Canadian, Canuckistinian native indigenous people with their potential mental health problems, and talking with the stakeholder service provider in such a way that that gentleman in earnest wants to know. He knows there's a bigger picture. In earnest, he thought he was helping. He's heard maybe that there's a bigger story to be doing, and he was able to communicate with somebody. Ron was able to communicate with him to continue the conversation in an earnest way, it sounded like, to learn more of the more comprehensive problem, not a compartmentalized stakeholder problem. That you, listening to me, going and doing the research, can then apply your skill to do that. Something I may not be able to do. Something you might give example in Ron Stevens just did, in order to make one more mind. You know, Gardasil, one more? Yeah, one more mind clear of the nonsense and focused on what needs to be done. Israel, Saudi Arabia, at least those two, in the United States, at least those three, tripartite evil. The plague, a blood clot on mankind. That's what we've become. How? That wasn't in my psyche at all, ever. I mean, this is why I come up late. I believed quite a bit, I guess. But it still doesn't change the fact that I still believe in a much more peaceful existence. Not the kumbaya style. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to be around people. We're not that kind to ourselves, and we can start to learn better, and we'd be more tolerant, but not in the agenda way, where it's a unitolerance. The unitolerance that's handed to you. You gave how that tolerance is going to work, not that one. But more, we have a capacity to be a lot more peaceful with ourselves, and maybe that's our work. But we don't. We're dropping that ball as well. That's us. That's on each one of us. Forget these nations. These caucustocracies. What did I tell? I entered the broadcast telling you you're being fed stuff that's causing you to have grand incapacities and ill health. That is planned. The problem is the plan. I've said this over and over. Well, just recently for sure, I put it in words. The problem, you see, is the plan. How is it you can continue to look at the problem, which is their plan, and not step up and stop that part you see? That's your problem. Your problem is their plan. Why aren't you stopping? Why don't you have enough self-worth to step up and stop that part? Is our problem. And I don't have a judgment on that. That's just the fact. Whether it be by overwhelmingness of the society, chemtrails, persistent contrails, the food you eat, the stuff, the toxins in your food, the food you don't eat, the chemicals you take in, the elements you may not take in, the pharmaceuticals you agree to, the lifestyle you might live, whatever that excuse is, you're not stopping the problem, which is someone else's plan. If you don't see that plan as harming you because now it's your problem, you're an accessory to the crime against you. You don't have a complaint. And I'm asking you why. Why are you so mentally defective that you are so low esteem in your own self that you'd allow that? Is the mental health problem they're putting on you now that you're now going to go pedal a bike somewhere, as I heard Ron say, and you're going to now proclaim your mental instableness? These idiots are the ones that's running the country. The minority insane are running the asylum, folks. If you can't see the writing on the wall, and that their plan is in force and effect. I don't know really what else more to say. Everyone just wants to write it off? Oh, just a bunch of crazy people. Those crazy people are destroying you. Another one that kind of makes a little bit of clarity, try and gets us on the right thought. Sanctions are crimes, not law enforcement. Sanctions are crimes, not law enforcement. Run that through your life a bit. How many things that they say are penalties that are actually sanctions, which are crimes against you, which I tell you is your civil rights. What, Title 42, USC 1981, that you will be paying extortions of every kind and no other. That's your civil rights. Go read it, folks. So a little statement comes up about these sanctions on Russia and what they're doing against everybody in the world. The United States is so big and bad. They're going to do all this nonsense economic attack. It's another economic warfare because they're a bully, because they can, not because it's right. But the U.S. Senate, the terrorist that it is, has increased sanctions on people of Iran and Russia. And if the House and President go low, you see a little bit of government function, but who is the House and who's the President? But the same party with the same psychopathic agenda. That would just now order an aircraft to shoot down another government's aircraft within its territory, defending itself from the war and the proxies and the terrorists that you set against them. And then blame Russia and Iran for coming to their help. It makes sense now, doesn't it, folks? That the United States is a terrorist. What's the worst word here, folks, than terrorist? I don't know. Concentrated evil is even cute. Senate psychopaths increase sanctions on the people of Iran and Russia, like they've ever done anything actual. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of geopolitical maneuvering and spies and all kinds of stuff going on. In fact, Putin just admitted to it. So-called illegal reconnaissance being done on the United States. They're not bashful to tell you. Everyone knows it. It's not stupid. It's not a secret. It'd be stupid to think anybody believes it's all a secret. So all that intrigue's always going on. But this is the many notches above. They have redefined what aggression is. Again, like they redefined what terrorism was. The United States government redefined terrorism so it wouldn't call itself a terrorist. I told you that's why they did it. How many years ago did I say they defined the word terrorism so that you couldn't find in their legal that the United States was a terrorist? I told you that. Now they're defining what aggression is. And it's two nations coming to the aid of an ally nation being invaded by the one defining the word aggression. Now, in this article, they had a little the author of the article on that got down. He's got to throw a little bit of climate change. How he got climate change in on this bill condition and what they're doing to Iran and Russia, I don't know. But these people are they're lunatics. He did it anyway. But he makes a comment about the greatest purveyor of violence, and I thought I'd heard that before somewhere, and so I looked it up, and the statement was the greatest purveyor of violence in the world today. It was written by Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., and you know I'm on record as having him being a player in all this. Remember, he agreed with the content of your character and civil rights, and I just told you that civil rights was your right to pay exactions of every kind, extortions of every kind, and no other. So that's where the author brings up this: the greatest purveyor of violence on the earth was the United States. If certain things didn't happen, well, here we are, folks. I guess he was predicting the future. Maybe he was told. I want to make the comment based on this author's work, not to go to his ideological preferences outside of what the problem is here. That the greatest purveyor of violence on earth is us. Remember, is us. Yeah, it's us. Israel, United States. The greatest incarcerator of people on earth is us. And a government that has legalized extortion, coercion, and bribery, and all things extrajudicial to do so is us. Terrorism is us. Martin Luther King calls it out. We're now living it today. Such that you live in those countries, and if you, again, the reflection back to the United States, if you think, oh, we live in a better place, oh, and because we got such a big army, it doesn't come home. Remember now, I told you whatever they do over to some people, they'll do in a warped sense here, and you will, well, now you get execution on the street just for having a gun, just for putting your hands up, just for having an opinion separate from the cop. But here is the evidence that they don't care about what they do to you. They do it over there the same way. A U.S.-led plague, remember they use the word coalition, U.S.-led coalition, the U.S.-led Blood-Klot is using banned weapons. Well, that kind of brings up, well, who was doing those chemical weapons before? Well, now they're using white phosphorus on Raqqa. The United States is using banned weapons of war on people. That's it. I don't need to talk anymore. They are using banned processes and banned actions in the United States against you all. And you stay crickets, and you let movements like Black Lives Matter take over what needs to actually be done, contrary to what I've told you has to be done and how to go about doing that. So your accessories to these crimes, where the United States tells you in other lands they're willing and will and do use banned weapons to kill people. That brings up a form of genocide that certainly seems consistent with Saudi Arabia and Israel, doesn't it? So we don't see a difference in purpose and cause in the world today. And this week, apparently, it just caught my mind. I see so many stories here in line that are telling us the truth of this, and I don't want to be on record now that I see it, but not having a record to say that the United States is a terrorist. Israel is a terrorist. Saudi Arabia is a terrorist. Now, the problem is, what are we going to do about it? Our problem is the plan. We've got to subvert the plan. You think it gets better? We hear it all the time. It's always consistent and confirmed on, and it's going down the memory hole like it doesn't exist, or like we have nothing to concern ourselves with it. Yet we heard it's happening in Chicago, it's happening in New York, and all the other police stations. That now we find out again as well. United States complicit in torture at secret prisons in Yemen. Not only do we use banned weapons, we do torture in other countries and through surrogates. One of the described tortures was called grilling. Involves tying individuals to skewers and twirling them over fires. Ex-prisoners also reported being beaten and sexually assaulted while captured. While we know that none of that, confessions that may be had for the most part are useful, you will say whatever you have to say to stop the pain. Is that the country that you want to live in that represents you? Is that who you vote in? Do you vote harder into the offices? Is that would you sit quietly when there's remedies about impeachment that you don't enforce? Or anything else that you find I try to talk to you about that can be done? That you agree to these things being done to other people, most likely very innocent, ultimately innocent. How do you be very innocent? I'm even doing an adjective on top of a fact. How much more do we have to be than what we are presumed and ought to be? And it's being defiled at every turn. I don't know how to say more importantly than to add an adjective onto innocence. Isn't that kind of stupid? I'm developing my own insanity over that, aren't I? United States complicit in torture with other countries, same Saudi Arabia, Arab Emirates, all these same players, the coalition, the blood clot on mankind. And what was all this under? Saudi Arabia, we found it was actually the starting of 9/11, 9/11. You ever thought that that was a programming, 9/11 emergency was a programming for you, coming through the international code, 9/11, 9/11 emergency? And so 9/11 happens, and we find out the Saudis backed up behind that. You think that these terrorists are all playing the game? You think that they got it all set up? Well, we'll do the act. We'll take a couple losses. We'll do our false flag. Not for the United States. For the terrorists is us. For this other thing that's rampaging over the world. So what does Congress do? These terrorists in chief paying for it. Not wanting to not arm terrorism. Congress fast track. They come back to here and they talk to you now eventually. Fast tracks bill. Congress fast tracks bill that would give DHS agencies access to NSA collections. Do I have to even talk about all the parallel constructions and all the nonsense that goes on? And when they keep transferring these datas around, all of a sudden everyone loses what I wrote back 15, 20 years ago, pee in a cup. You lose where the pee is. You lose where your rights are supposed to be protected. No one even knows even to put them forward. And then ages go on, decade or so goes on, and everyone forgets. And then you lose. You lose completely. Your future is gone. Your future's generations, they're destroyed. You might as well just cough that up. Oh, you all sitting back right now, allowing it, just understand your progeny, your offspring are done. You did it. DHS and access NSA collections, what did I just say opening up here pretty earlier, was that the Apple is saying you will agree to surveillance. Period. Where do you think that's going, folks? This pee, the cup, the magic, the bunko game that we get lost in, and where's the cup? Well, they took the pee. They're just moving cups around on the table, we found out later after we got taken for everything we were worth, if we were worth anything, because we never stopped and stood up, and we eventually, actually, we played the game to begin with. We weren't even principled enough to stay away from the table. No, we let people that set up food tables for the homeless get arrested, but the bunko table, that we played. We are insane. That Sweden agrees to exchange fingerprints with the United States. And here's this problem that we have. Well, if they can get it from Sweden, then they don't have to then come. We don't have to follow the United States restrictions from the Constitution. A new government decision paves the way for Swedish police to strike a deal with their American counterparts to get permission to use each other's fingerprint databases to look for suspects. Who isn't a suspect in a world of enemy combatants, folks? U.S. Customs and Border Protection reveals next level of biometric ID at airports. ID for what? They're IDing you because you're an enemy combatant. Otherwise, you're innocent, aren't you? Innocent of even the imposition. You have a right to travel, don't you? And yet you don't, because you have to go through this. And what have I said the answer to all this? We need a crew of people jumping down this point. First of all, we need the so-called consumer to stop going to these airlines that are adopting these tests. Secondly, and consistently, coincidentally to that, we need a crew of people going against the agency that allows this imposition of a standard that you need to be ID'd. Am I going to get any takers? I'm pausing. I don't think so. One of you guys can answer. I don't know. Send me an email, mark@yahoo.com. I'll take that on. That is a problem. I'll take that on. Nobody. No. Answers. You don't have to go find the answer, but you don't have to go search no more. Here it is. They're coming to take you out. The technocrat is winning. Next generation 911 centers spy inside homes and businesses. How brilliant was this correlation between the global governance, global structure, technocrat, 911 enhanced services for your emergencies, and then the towers go down on 9/11, and then all the esoterical type things. Is esoterical a word? Anyway, it doesn't matter. Next generation 911 centers spy inside homes and businesses. Folks, they're getting you. I told you, they gave you something, a tool. They give you a benefit. They give you a gift, and you take it, and then they impose it on everyone. Oh, it's supposed to send a little code. It doesn't work until you call in, but they have the back door, remember? They can turn that on whenever. They talk about it being businesses, homes and business. Well, homes are tax homes, folks, and businesses are also in commerce. They get you to believe you're both. And then you get the people that are all feared for their life because, well, heck, there's going to be a car driving down the road, run me down. I better have this thing. Here's a camera in my house. Maybe you can protect me from the guy who's going to run me down in the street. Maybe he's going to come in for a hot latte when I'm in bed or something. You might catch him beforehand. First net, or next generation. Remember they talk about future generations, folks? Here's next generation. That's one of those future generations. It's a stakeholder in your life, going to plunder your life. Next generation, generation 911. Allows police to spy inside people's homes and businesses without a warrant. See, they get you to do it. You don't even need the warrant. It's here, folks. It's going to be part of codes. This is done in, I'm looking at the name, Seattle. Seattle's a sanctuary city even. This is one of the most globalized centers. In fact, Nikki Rapana, I think, started in Seattle. She's now up in Alaska, or was, and I've followed her for many years. She was more active when I found out about her. She's from Seattle. Her story tells you firsthand how far back they were putting this nonsense is. 911 was a globalist plan, technocrats' plan to surveil you. The 911 enhanced. Remember the word enhanced. That's part of the nomenclature for that system. That they brought that in. Now it's going to be next generation 911. All started because of 9/11. These people are brilliant. Not so brilliant for us, and really not so brilliant. They're just smart. S-M-A-R-T, right? This is just the technocrat. They are getting control because they can create a problem for you. The problem is the plan, and you don't say, that ain't no problem, and you didn't have a right to put that on me. And it's pretty much that simple. You just have to find out where that goes and who to tell that to. And hopefully in sufficient numbers, and it's not that many, actually. It's just a concerted effort. A spear point, if you will, to stop a lot of this nonsense. The United States comes up with the Congress comes up with the DHS can get collections from NSA. They make then deals with foreign countries to get the information that they can reroute out there, so they don't have to do protections. The Apple says, well, you're not going to have no surveillance at all. You keep plugging yourself in like Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars says so. And we got a whole other way better to go. And so while the Congress is doing this the United States is doing this as a terrorism, and we have all this discussion on freeing people up to cure themselves. Now we're moving into, before we were saying, well, the MSG is now hurting us, and glyphosate might be able to be destroyed in the gut by at least start eating vinegar, folks, with the live yeast, the live bacteria in it. Start at least having salads with that to start there. That'll be the first thing. We find out that we're supposed to be so advanced in the United States, but how backwards we are, because it's about the bottom line. It's how much money they can make. And I told you a long time ago, I was concerned with the legalization, certainly, of it. Stop making it criminal. Period. That's it. But no, they legalize it. Why? Because they can make taxes on that. They can put restrictions. They can put regulation. They can make bureaucracy. A bureaucrat can look over and scrutinize your junk. This is what they're doing in most of the countries. That's not the enlightened view. When we start to see Mexico now, at the same time, now legalizes medical marijuana across the entire country. Now, I have a problem with legalization, but the point is that their government, national government, is more advanced than the United States to do this up front. Peña Nieto was once a vehement opponent for cannabis legalization, but has since called for a re-examination of global drug policy. See, they're all tied in, folks. This is the UN, the WHO, no, not the rock group, not the OWL, the WHO, World Health Organization, saying pot's no good. They want to change the global policy they apparently have to follow. A nationwide public debate on legalization in early 2016. So far, the solutions to control drugs and crime implemented by the international community have been, frankly, insufficient. Well, that's because he wants to see it solved, and he must be a good guy. Well, the governments don't want to, these bureaucracies don't want to solve a thing. And so they were talking back in 2016. Turns out here this last week that the Mexico it was introduced a measure that would allow Mexican citizens to possess up to an ounce of cannabis without repercussions, but the bill stalled, and then they keep pushing and they keep pushing. And here's the evidence that you have to keep in there pushing where you can. And now they've got in April they voted in favor of a new bill, and it says Dr. Jose Naro voices support for the measure, saying, "I welcome the approval of the therapeutic use of cannabis." So there's a whole change, a psychological change going on. It takes only a year. The point is, people are pushing on this. Peña Nieto's decree effectively eliminates the criminalization of the medicinal use of cannabis. Remember I told you, you might want to err on the side of the medicinal use in the United States for sure. Don't rely on the recreational stuff. And I said, then what they've done in their legalization in the United States is that they've made some of the extracts, which I deem to be the CBD oil, to be the lucrative market they were not allowing you to have in the legalization, that Mexico says is all right for y'all to have. That is a critical distinction as well. Now, so the ruling eliminates the prohibition and criminalization of acts related to medicinal use of marijuana and its scientific research of those relating to the production and distribution of the plant for those purposes. For those purposes. And this is a purpose and intent. You have to watch that. My point is here that while the Congress the United States is a terrorist and continues to push terrorism and has no sense to not keep a control on anything that can make some money, and Mexico looks enlightened here to allow it nationally and just stop the nonsense. Just stop it. Take out all the profit, the interest. Let people do as they will. So what do we do here in the United States? Not only do they not make it natural, and they haven't come up to speed on that there is any use that can be made of this cannabis product, even the CBN. What Congress does is propose a law which threatens the industrial hemp and turns CBD research over to Big Pharma. Just as I've been predicting this whole thing was. When I saw the local state bills prohibiting certain extracts from being actually legalized even under medicinal uses, I realized the jig was up. And a multinational corporate attorney wrote those legalization bills that I told you all, do not vote them in. And you didn't listen. You don't listen behind the woodshed. You're not listening to the principles. And you don't listen to the principles behind the woodshed, you become undisciplined in the future. And who puts this forward? No, but Feinstein and Grassley introduced the Cannabinol Research Expansion Act. Research expansion. They weren't doing anything before, folks. They want to control the actual medical part of this cannabis. I predicted this. Here it is. It's taken them how slow they work too. I can see it in an instant. Now they get bold enough to bring it out. But that's going to interfere with the hemp that they've been allowing under another act. Because CBD is made through both of them, not necessarily THC. And I won't go more. Folks that are being quiet, that didn't talk to the DEA, that won't write your letters, that don't listen behind the woodshed, that don't really engage yourself, just take a few minutes a week to write a letter somewhere and just stick with it and do it on points that you're supposed to, not just these feelings. Oh, I'm in a wheelchair and I can't get up steps. No, get after go find out what the standards are and go after them. These people are bringing bills because you aren't insisting on otherwise. And they're handing this whole thing. Your fear that Big Pharma was going to get marijuana is your problem, your fault, and gonna happen. Why? Because you didn't stand up, you didn't listen behind the woodshed, and you didn't stand up to stop the inevitable when you created the vacuum. So while Mexico gives it up, the United States tries to control it. I told you, stop legalizing this nonsense. You're not listening. And if you're listening, you're not acting to be influential. And because of that, you will be out of whatever you find important. Like I said, until I saw that there was nothing I could use cannabis for that I thought, I was never interested. But I'm still not interested. But I find out that other people are helped greatly and cured at times. And now, so that becomes a call for me. We need to fix things, and we need to bring ourselves out of pain, out of suffering, out of continuing to agree with these people that are literally only under an ethics certification, the limit of was created by somebody in the industry to interfere with your pocketbook and continue your disease or your pain as a tenant on your own land and you didn't even know it, or the functioning of how the medication you are prescribed works or doesn't work or causes more dysfunction so you need more medication, or the tax preparer that signs you all up and gets you all saying who you're not and you don't know better. And this is how it works, and it's a sad thing to watch. It's a sad thing to come away with after so many years on the planet, only having a short time and realizing we're just, like they say, on a plantation. We're just in a zoo. We're in an insane asylum. We're not where we're supposed to be. It's all there for us, but we're not choosing to demand it and then hold it, to keep it. And that's a sad thing. And I don't know I'm not so smart to know. I'm not so intelligent to know how to do different. Maybe this is my insanity coming and just speaking my brains out every two hours, working. I must put in 8 hours on a broadcast and put in some hours a night, and I put in hours after the broadcast, and like last week I put in 2.5 hours just to get the audio good enough for nobody to go and listen to it. I guess maybe that's why I'm a little bit disappointed, huh? Maybe put a lot of time for nothing. Well, hopefully the handful of you that read it got something and do something with it. That's really my reward. I'll wait a year and a half. I found out 2 years to even hear we might have a big one. That's how persistent and I am, and also how dumb I am. I'm sitting around looking dumb-faced for a year and a half. Did we do anything? Well, maybe we did, and maybe it's going to be really, really big, and we can use that again as the stone that we lay down in the creek, so that we can forge the creek of despair that they've dug in front of us, in the trench we accepted them to dig in front of us, so we get to the side, we get back to the promised land. But we're going to have to put our time in. We're going to have to learn how to appreciate that. So we have this big group of criminal critters going on. United States, they want to confine the business of drugs. And when we got drug running in the CIA, an agent is busted running a massive drug smuggling operation. In a glaring case of hypocrisy, well, it's not hypocrisy. It's the truth in your face. Using the word hypocrisy by the author is a denial. In a glaring case of truth, a former Navy SEAL and CIA special agent was arrested and charged for running a massive national drug smuggling ring that no doubt everybody knew about. But here, he must have ticked somebody off, and I don't mean Lyme disease, and then so he's going to be outed. And that makes the government look like they're here to help you. Do I need to say more, really? No, this is what they go on. See, the prohibition allows and fosters this, even if nobody knew about it. If you take it away, stop criminalizing the use, and the use for private use, or the production for private use of at least the natural plants, you will see a grand diminishment of the war against you. That is just another terrorism, isn't it? See, the government is a terrorist. It's not supposed to be. Nothing in law allows it, but because we see the overt statement of going extrajudicial, they were telling us, and there's nothing you can do about this, neener. And so far it's been 7 years, and they're getting away with their neener. And so we get one guy who probably ticked somebody off and got caught. What do you think is going on behind the scenes? Who do you think took over that? What Don rolled into town and took that away from this guy and is now running this operation? And the government is all doing this because of their policies. Oh, no, don't just stop criminalizing it, and so that people can't get hurt by it, so that drops the price so they can grow the stuff. And I'm not necessarily talking about this product. This one was what? The drugs, they say drug smuggling. Oh, a bunch of marijuana. Well, listen, if I can grow it, why would I buy it from you, right? So as long as they have this privatization to whomever, and the legalization for taxation of the government, you're going to lose. And it'll allow these kinds of things to be exploited, and they come out looking like they're the heroes. In fact, they are the problem. Legalizing this stuff, I can't imagine. I've been hearing people are really having trouble. The people who grow marijuana thought they were going to get into it for the fat hog they were going to cut. The prices have dropped by over half, as I predicted they would. I mean, you got more people producing, right? And the market wasn't opened up to everyone, so we also had a limited, potentially limited place for it to flow through. And so the prices are dropping. Well, if the prices are dropping, it starts costing more than to get it somewhere, than it's valuable, than it has value for. And we could just nip that in the bud right there in local growth, don't we? But no, we don't think that way. Our terrorists in chief in Congress would rather control it, because I'm sure in the back side of this, in the back end, they're taking it somewhere, and they've got it all figured out how they're going to profit from it. No different than we're finding out in the public lands conservation area. You conserve a bunch of land with a lot of value, you can monetize that, and you can be part of an investment group that takes money and dividends from the fact that the United States government will keep that land from being worked to the benefit of the trust holding that conservation easement. This is a complete plunder on the on people and the states and the laws and everything else. And this is no different. This is a reservation that they're putting on CBN oils that someone in the back, the government officials, probably have investments in the companies that will get, the stakeholders that will get this benefit, and they will make their money. It looks like some investment through the stock exchange, and in fact it was a big theft. And everybody takes their cut, and everybody wink and a nod, it's okay. Am I talking too fast here, folks? I mean, is it too hard to figure this out? And then do I have not reason to be dismayed that no one responds and responds to this and gets something working on it? Don't let this be like the child services thing, where I'm working at this thing in year 2000, and now we're just this last 2 years we're starting to hear the world understand the problem with the child services and all this other nonsense. It's been how many years? 17 years? Let's not make all this other stuff 17 years before people start seeing the light. I'm telling it to you now. Speaking of, it's funny how I look away and then come back with the point. Speaking of child services, you know these systems are corrupt. CIA here has got an agent inside doing drug running, all because of the policy, the drug war. If it doesn't have a drug war, there's no policy that guy would profit from. He would have no interest. But you cover up from the inside. We'll throw we'll throw someone under the bus, and the rest of that system keeps working. Reminded me again of this story. Breaking, Church of England admits it colluded, the word colluded is used here, to cover up decades of child rape. Is these systems of government that are closed, that you think are white knight, that you think are, well, in this case, we're going to example Jesus, aren't we? Now, I don't know about you, but that just doesn't do it for me. But now we have the Church of England. Folks in Britain, you guys are in trouble. You've been in trouble. You think I talked funny in the beginning of this about you all getting run down in the streets and you're in fear. What about all the people that are abused that didn't know it? Finally coming out all these years later. The Church of England has just conceded that they conspired to cover up and conceal decades of child sexual abuse by its high-level members. If you don't think that the example of Jesus is in a high enough place to fall from, and you don't think the lesser organizations it's worse, you're deluded. You're just a walking excuse. Please stop. Do I like to hear it? No, but I do like to hear it. I like to hear it because it exposes it. I couldn't get my word out, my documentary out to expose this 17 years ago. It was happened long before I got to it, folks. But I'm glad to see even this late that it comes out. And look how fast people started turning on it, and how fast this starts getting exposed. What's going to happen to it, I don't know, but at least the ball is rolling toward the right pocket this time. It didn't happen by itself. I think part of my attitude continues to be, and I haven't found anything to say, all we're seeing this SJW nonsense is all because we're a bunch of abused people because of this stuff was never called out because the system itself protected itself. Only once in a while will you see somebody thrown out under the bus. And then you say, oh, they're cleaning it up. I told you that dynamic too years and years ago. I told you be careful of all these people in the government coming out, these prosecutors coming out and saying, oh, we caught 200 people doing child porn. Be careful, they're not the ones that are using that to cover up their problems, what they're doing. The Church of England is the Queen, isn't it? Do I have that wrong? Do I go too far? Or do I have that about right? 1213? King John gave away the kingdom to save his soul. In 1400 something, Papal Bull issues says, whatever agreement you had with those peasants does not diminish our agreement with you. Does that sound about right too, folks? You ever hear about that? That was one of those things I do remember reading. Read the black and white. Didn't think I was onto anything. Who knows what. Early on, I'm researching all kinds of stuff. Never thought to take copies. Was never in a position to be able to keep copies. And now I wish I'd done my trails, my paper trails that way, to be able to prove it out. I think you can do that for yourself once you hear it. This is not a surprise. This is just them admitting to what we've already known. What systems do against you. These people are terrorists. The Catholic Church is a terrorist. Remember, it works with Israel too, which works with the which controls the United States, which works to protect Saudi Arabia. What do you mean the Arabs hate Israel? Stop your nonsense if you believe that. Go back and look very carefully, a lot more carefully. And for those of us that seen it and keep seeing it, what we really have to take stock. What do we do? Now, on the end of it all, I don't have an answer on the end. I can't fix the momentum, but we can start to redeflect and reintegrate and re-expose and demand the accountability as we can. More and more people can demand more accountability and become that pressure on those points that have gotten us to this place. We're so dysfunctional and abused, we actually go out to the street corner to watch the accident happen. I got a little bit of confirmation on the Great Britain Vatican. I understand that, from the writings. I just can't remember what my mind is working fast. It's just kind of working on a stream. I'd like to be more accurate, but I'm not. Just as the way I come here, kind of naked to you all with my my study and my research and my thoughts about this as we move along, trying to make sense of the nonsense, and then asking you all repeatedly, maybe to the detriment of the broadcast as far as the listenership, to do something about it. It's all here to do something. We don't have to research that. We don't have to know more. You really don't have to know more. You want to know how to interpret some of this? I'm available. You can do it yourself. It's not that hard. Once you start reading, it's pretty clearly laid out, like I was telling you last week. When you hear the woman talk about the statutory codes in California telling you what traffic is on, just specifically stating it, I don't know of anybody that's got a mind above an IQ 30. Well, maybe an 80. Maybe a cop can get it. That understands what that means, but they're trained to not recognize that, right? So, but they should know once they're told what it is, they go, oh, I didn't know that. Well, the problem is you violated me in the first instance, and you didn't have that right. But it isn't a special knowledge that we have to read these things. You don't have to know the special knowledge. They tell you very clearly these things don't apply to you. What they're doing is they are applying them to you. What I say is find the law that says that was the felony. And then you're going to need a whole bunch of you because you live in an occupied territory where everyone in a seat of decision is the felon. You all have to arrest that. I don't know what else to say. I'm sitting here. What else do I say after that? You all. It's us. I'm doing what I can. I don't know where else I can. I mean, I can only got so much time in my life. I don't think I've turned anybody down, ever. I've certainly had a whole lot of people fall on the way they come to me telling me tales about how much their intention to go do, and then I find out they want me to do it. Well, I don't have a problem at some level to help that part, but that's not going to help any one of you all that you come to me to do that. That's why I insist that you at least want to do for yourself. Don't put it on me. Maybe why I don't get a lot of calls, because on inside everyone says, well, I'd rather see, well, you got all the words, maybe you could do it better. No, you do it better because you know your own stuff. You have the passion in you or you don't. You are either an accessory to the crime against you and you agree with that crime or you're not. It's not that hard a decision. There is no excuse to make that's sufficient to not address the harm that you see against you in the first instance, and maybe not so much, but those against others. And I say if it's those against others, it's probably against you. It will be in some form. You train by the lack of accountability, you train that one who's doing that to continue to do it. It's either whether it becomes this organized criminal idea in someone's mind to continue, the color of the authority and the power it brings, the illusion of that, or just being stupid and disrespectful to people. You all that have a principle in you need to bring it out and example that for others, because I think we're either lost that part and need to be brought back, or we may be too diminished in capacity, as I explained earlier in the broadcast. The feed they give us is diminishing our capacity to even respond, let alone come to the point where we are capable of even responding. And maybe to the next level where I talk about you're capable in applying what you know and doing it more correctly. Thank you for tuning in today. I hope something I said helped you out. I know we went a little bit international. United States is a terrorist. Israel's a terrorist. They're all Saudi Arabia's a terrorist, and here we're going to allow it. I can't see that, folks. Thank you, Grimner, for what you do at reallibertymedia.com, the Blogcaster page, the archives, and then over at freedomsnetwork.com with Bo Diddy. And the social network, folks, you can join up. I don't see many people listen to any of this, so I don't know. I hope some people do something there and kind of make it a tool for themselves. And UCY.TV, Jules, thank you very much for your podcast, recast and pastcast, recast on Thursday, following Ron Stevens. Thank you to the terrestrial broadcasters. I'd appreciate any of you that are broadcasting to the terrestrials, and appreciate next week. I'll be here next week, tech diffs and nature willing.
Well, that's another lesson. I hope with today's information you can take it to those that misbehave. From behind the woodshed, leaving his mark on the beast, this is Hal Anthony. Till next time, journey with purpose.
Well, that's what opening up a can of whoop-ass feels like.
Son, you just opened a whole case of whoop-ass.